What happens if you lock a room of designers and engineers together with a big bag of sweeties? Well, they come up with this, and then they bring it to market. But the question remains, are you ready to say goodbye to boring sedans? Welcome to the Aion Hyper GT, and welcome to the Fully Charged Show.
If you like the Fully Charged Show, you will love our Everything Electric exhibitions around the world.
Next up, Everything Electric Australia
and Everything Electric London.
Get your tickets today.
So let's make one thing very clear. This is tipped to be going overseas, and it's very clear to me that this is a massive step above the Tesla Model S, for example. It also makes something like the BYD Seal seem a little bit plain in comparison, because this thing is utterly bonkers. I mean, honestly, there isn't really much need for this car in the world, but I'm so much happier that there is. Because why should sedans be boring? Why should we settle for boring EVs? This shows to the world, shows to everyone, that you can have a lot of fun with a car like this in a ridiculous hyper orange colour. Now this is some really neat features. Now I have to say, this is the top of the range version they've given us. It's 339,000 RMB. So I have LiDAR, I've got my units on the top and on the side here. Now all of the cars have this, which is a wind blade grille down here. Now this opens up at speed to help with the slipperiness of the car. And that's what this car is really focused on, is efficiency. So this has a drag coefficient of 0.197 CD, which is the lowest of any production car on the market today. They've really thought about that efficiency throughout the whole car, and we'll see more of that in a minute. But the designers have also had a lot of fun because, as you can see, it's got two scissor doors. We've just come away from the MG Cyberster just a few days ago, and I'm back with scissor doors. I have to say, I still like them. So last year we were really lucky to actually go and visit GAC and see the battery technology that was going into their future cars. And it definitely went into this car. Now this is based on 800 volt architecture. Why is that important? Because that can mean extremely fast charging. Now this obviously has your AC and DC chargers, but this, if you find the right charger, can do 450 kilometers of range in 15 minutes in a humdrum sedan. This is a real game changer, and I'm glad this is starting to come to the mass markets already. The important thing to mention is that this car isn't really about speed. Although it looks like it's all about speed from the outside, it's all about efficiency. Now this does something like 12.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers of driving, which is pretty efficient for a car of this size. Now that efficiency drive, I think, is really important, and it's a sign of a really good trend for electric cars in general to focus on what can we eke out of the smallest battery possible. Smaller batteries, cheaper, more efficient. That's what we like, and I think with this slippery body, they're starting to begin to get in that direction, which I think is a good sign. What also impresses me with this car is it does have a lot of self-driving features. So it has the LiDAR, so it can see everything around it, which makes it a really competent self-driving car. And that's what I kind of like about what Aion have done with this. Again, not everyone needs LiDAR, needs all of those features, so you don't have to get it. You can get the lower version of this car. But with this car at this price, with LiDAR and self-driving tech, it's very impressive. Now I've got, the self-driving controls are here. It's very easy to switch on, turn off. And it's just, honestly, self-driving here in China has just become the norm. It's just become normal to switch on self-driving when you're on the highway or perhaps in urban environments as well. I would say this probably could be a little bit better. It's not the most advanced self-driving that I've ever experienced, but it's not bad for the price. Getting into a car with scissor doors can be sometimes a little bit inelegant, but I think I managed it with grace. Now if I close the door, I've got a button here to open, button here to close. There you go, pretty good. And it's really amazing what they have packed in here for the price. I've got really quite high-end materials. I've got microfiber cloth, I've got wireless charging, I've got 2 screens, a 14-inch and an 8-inch screen in front of me. But the overall feeling in the cabin is one of lightness, space. And I do feel that when you're driving along, because this screen in front of me is actually set a long way back, which means I've got a much better view of the road, and it's kind of feels like the front end is pointing down like a rabid dog sniffing for truffles in a French alpine forest. You know, otherwise all the materials are fine. My only real gripe in here is this screen. Now this screen is quite messy. I think the UX, the user experience, is quite difficult. I just think I prefer the minimalist look. Maybe that's just me, but there's a lot of bits on here and I wish it could just be a little bit pared down. Now that's a very easy fix if they were going to bring this overseas, and I think it would be a much better car for it. Massive disappointment. Why are these not scissor doors? They should all be scissor doors. Should be surrounded by scissor doors. But all joking aside, you don't need scissor doors in the back. Anyway, the back is actually pretty good for passengers. I've got this huge, what they call sky curtain above my head here, which does help with that feeling of airiness and space. All this white, leathery, pleathery stuff helps with that, and I've got the microfiber cloth above my head. You don't actually have a lot of features in this car. I've got LED lights, and I can tell you that they pulsate to the beat of Peppa Pig. I knew that because my 3-year-old absolutely loved it last night. The other thing is air conditioning. Obviously it has air conditioning, but there is only a heat pump on the most expensive model. So this is the most expensive one. All the other, there's 7 others in the range, don't have a heat pump, which seems a bit strange. But when you're trying to pack, 800 volt architecture, rear wheel drive, slippery drag coefficient into one body, then some things have to go. But for me, getting rid of the heat pump, not good. What I like most about this car is it can really handle any situation that's thrown at it. So country road driving, which is what we're doing now, it just laps it up. It's very easy to drive. And now I would be worried about the space of this because it feels like quite a large car, but it really actually isn't. I'm not sure if I'm 100% sold on the shape of the steering wheel, this square top and square bottom. It makes it feel quite sporty, I guess. It's a bit smaller. It does feel quite nice when you're actually handling the car around some, twisty corners like this. But then the suspension does let it down slightly. Now, this is probably the weakest part of this car, is this suspension feel. Now, it's got pretty standard suspension. I think this car would be a little bit better if it had air suspension. Now, obviously, the cost would then go up. It wouldn't be this super affordable, ridiculous sedan. So I'd say the suspension, you feel every bump in the road. It doesn't feel as planted as, say, something like a Tesla Model 3. It just feels a little bit wobbly, slightly. And I think the other thing is the steering, whilst it feels very precise, it doesn't give me a lot of feedback from the road. I'd say that's another slightly weak point of this car. But these are very small points, and in actual fact, the car drives fine 95% of the time. Now, we've got an empty bit of road, so we're going to pedal to the metal. Yeah, that's quite fast. I just can't get over how quick these electric cars have become. Now, this actually isn't even that fast. It's just a rear-wheel drive motor. It's got one motor, and it gives you something like 4.9 seconds to 60 on this version. This is the top version. Now, the lower version, lower spec version, it's over 6 seconds to 60, which seems slow, but it's really not. You don't need any more than that. And I think for that really low price point, you'll be more than happy with that 0 to 60 time. Now, of course, this being a sedan, it's very practical. It's got 5 doors. It's got 5 seats. And it's got this. Yes, active aero. Now, this obviously helps with the aerodynamic stability of the car at high speeds because it's a Hyper GT. But what I think it is super cool. I think all cars should have something like this. Now, I like what GAC, the parent company, have done with this car. They've gone subtle, they've gone refined, they haven't gone all build your dreams across the back. Very nice Hyper GT badge down the bottom. Learn something there, BYD. Now, if we actually look at the boot here, very voluminous. It goes all the way back there, quite deep, lots and lots of space. It's also got a false floor. So very, very good in terms of a practicality standpoint. So, mums and dads of the world, if you're trying to convince your partners that you need a practical family saloon, I suggest you get the Hyper GT with an added dose of wing. Now, as I was saying previously, I think the screen on this does let the car down slightly because it's just not intuitive. Yes, it's in Chinese, but we can read through these menus. We were trying to look for changing the modes. Most cars, it's a simple switch or you just 1 or 2 presses down here, but in here you've got to dive into a menu, then find sports mode, but they've got something called hyper mode, but it doesn't seem to make that much difference in the driving of the car. So perhaps this is the area that I think needs probably the most amount of work in this car, but it's good because it's quite relatively easy to fix unless your name is VW, and then it's not. I do like how they've kept kind of the steering area very unfussy. I've got my driving modes here on a stalk like a Tesla or an Xpeng, up down to reverse and drive, and park, push it in. So pretty standard controls here, not going all buttons on the steering wheel just yet for indication. What I like most about this car is the visibility. So there's actually 4 windows on each side. I've got a small A-pillar window down here, and I've got a C-pillar window back there, plus the 2 main passenger windows. And this kind of rakes down here. So it's really easy to see the front of the car and the road. I can see the bulges of the wheels on the bonnet as well. So in actual fact, driving this here today to film was an absolute delight because it was just relaxing. And then when I came onto these smaller country roads, you can point the car in any direction and it pretty much responds and goes where you want it to, which is what a car should be doing, but it does it with a bit more aggression or a bit more feeling than perhaps some other cars. Sure, there's other cars out there with perhaps more features or better features or more interesting features, but really the features that you need and that you'll want to live with on a day-to-day basis are inside the Hyper GT. It's the important things that you have to live with that will make all the difference in a good ownership experience. And this delivers that in spades. Boring parents of the world, rejoice, you have a new way to be cool and relevant again with the Hyper GT, and you can haul ass to your next family gathering. If you want to see the technology behind GAC, behind the Hyper GT, you can watch my video over here. If you want to see another sensible but slightly bonkers sedan, watch my ET5 touring video over here.